One of the biggest problems with the Republican Party as it exists today is that it has institutionalized this idea that character in public office doesn't matter. And nothing could be further from the truth. Hi, I'm Nate Charles, and welcome back to the Rule of Law Brief. In fact, I would argue that character in office is one of the foundational requirements of our constitutional system of government. Republicans often like to remind people that the United States is not a direct democracy. I mean, they're right, but that's not the flex they think it is. We are a constitutional republic. And that distinction between a direct democracy and a constitutional republic matters an awful lot. Now, in a direct democracy, the people themselves would participate in every significant government decision. And if citizens are making every important policy decision, then maximum transparency is necessary. The public would need access to all the facts, all the arguments, all the negotiations, and all the trade offs before voting. But the framers of the US Constitution understood that a system like that is very inefficient and very impractical. A nation cannot function if hundreds of millions of people are expected to personally deliberate and vote on every major question of public policy. It would be slow, it would be inefficient, and frankly, it would just be impossible. It would leave the nation vulnerable to paralysis. That is why the framers of the US Constitution created a republic. A republic is a system in which citizens elect representatives to govern on their behalf. And that necessarily means that much of the actual work of government happens outside of direct public observation. There are committee meetings, there are negotiations, there are compromises, there are private conversations, there are discussions behind closed doors. And frankly, that is not a bug in our system. It is a feature. There's a very old metaphor that goes something like making laws is similar to making sausage. You want to enjoy the final product, but you don't really want to see how it's made. The metaphor or the analogy is usually offered as a joke, but I think it captures something profoundly important about how representative governments work. The public is not supposed to participate in every step of the process. The public is not supposed to witness every negotiation. The public is not supposed to sit in every room where every compromise is being discussed. To borrow a line from Hamilton, the public is not always in the room where it happens. The entire purpose of representative government is that citizens delegate those responsibilities to elected officials. The public gets to enjoy the sausage without having to spend every waking hour inside the sausage factory. But that creates an obvious problem. If we aren't watching the sausage being made, how do we know that the people making it are actually acting in our best interests? And that is where character comes in. Character is the safeguard. Character is what allows citizens to trust that when public officials are operating beyond public scrutiny, they are still acting in good faith. Character is what allows us to believe that compromises are being made for the benefit of the country rather than for personal gain. Character is what allows us to believe that power is being exercised responsibly rather than selfishly. And that is why character in office is not merely a moral issue. It is a structural requirement of our representative democracy. The Constitution cannot monitor every conversation. The law cannot supervise every negotiation. Eventually, every republic depends upon the integrity of the people who have been voted into office. And that is why I find the modern Republican Party so disgusting, because it has increasingly normalized the idea that character doesn't matter, that honesty doesn't matter, that integrity doesn't matter, that abuses of power can be ignored as long as they produce some sort of desired political outcome. There are aspects of Donald Trump's policies that I support. Not a lot, but some. There are many more that I don't support, but that's beside the point. The point is that the Republican Party has increasingly asked Americans to ignore questions of character altogether. And that is a lesson that a constitutional republic cannot afford to learn. If the citizenry can no longer trust the people making the sausage, they will eventually stop trusting the government altogether.